Pat Crakes, I love the at Twitter, at Aquinas82nd, a part of our military for the longest of time, served for our country, consultant, media executive, soldier. And he joins us, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and David Smoak on 365 Sports. It's been a while. It's every day something going on with college athletics, TV, whatever. Pat, thanks for your time. So what do you think the CW and ACC hookup actually means, and does that open the door that they might start doing more, or close the door that that's all they have time for?
Oh, absolutely. Well, hey, guys, thanks for having me on again. So what it tells to me is it's just part of an ongoing trend where the declining established pay TV system is kind of keeping the things it wants, and it's letting go some stuff. And new types of distributors, whether everything from Apple and Amazon to large station groups that were actually created to take advantage of pay TV through retransmission fees, are picking up the content. So this package was a package of games that were sub-licensed from ESPN to Raycom. They ended up on the regional sports networks in the Valley Sports and the Valley Sports bankruptcy. They asked if they could let them go, and Raycom took them back, and then they turned around and found a home for them on the CW network, which is owned by Nexstar, and they own 36% of the stations that are in that footprint for that network. And that's happening with some other station groups. Some station groups, Gray, for example, is going to distribute Utah Jazz games now because the Jazz's RSN, AT&T just said we don't want to do this anymore, and the Jazz had nowhere to go. So increasingly, the WNBA is also now being distributed by a large stations group on Friday Night Ion. And these are alternative forms of distribution. They're good forms of distribution. They'll have wrinkles to them, right? But they're all getting these opportunities because these rights are no longer being kept by the established system, which monetized nearly every piece of sports media it could for the past 20 years. That's all beginning to change.
What do you think this means for the Pac-12 as far as opportunities they may have? Because here we are 4 days before media days, and they don't have a deal, and George Kliavkoff is going to have to probably walk out and say that they don't on Friday.
Well, one thing for sure, he's certainly driving engagement with this plan. But pay attention to our media day, right? Look, I think at the end of the day, the Pac-12's problem is that, like I said, everybody's having to make decisions, harder decisions about what they're going to keep inside the established pay TV system, which gives all these sports media properties access to general market economics. Remember, pay TV at one point was in 94% of all U.S. TV homes. It enabled everybody's content to scale everywhere. And through bundling, which is a form of wholesaling, you could offer all the content inside it for a lower price, and kind of everybody paid for it, and you got general market economics for something that should have, quite frankly, been segmented, right? You can't make an argument that Cincinnati Reds should be generating economics based upon everybody in the United States, but the pay TV bundle enabled them to do that. It was a fabulous business. So, that's all kind of adjusting and changing, and the Pac-12 has kind of gone last in this process. And, that's not necessarily their fault. That's what their deal was. You could say that maybe they should have treated it like a crisis more, but I don't blame them for not thinking that way, right? They thought that they would play by the rules, and this was the right logical place for them to go. So it's hard for them to sort out their distribution. I do think they're going to come up with a good distribution package at the end of the day, guys. But it's hard to see exactly what the dials in the mix will be. Just the truth of the matter is increasingly all the rewards in this new system that's less profitable than the old system are going to go to the very tippy top things, right? And before, if it went to the top 10 or 15%, the lion's share of the rewards, this is what a power law is. Now it's going to be 8-7%. So that's the NFL. That's the two super mega college conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. Other folks are going to have to find more complicated routes, whether that's MLS having to go over to Apple, or Thursday Night Football having to go to Amazon. The Pac-12's in that box, and they're going to be another front runner in this. That doesn't mean that their distribution deal is going to look terrible or all the schools are going to end up in different conferences. But it's not easy to sort this out because they're kind of going first on this. They're one of the first couple to go.
Does an ACC Pac-12 doubleheader every Saturday for the CW make sense to you?
Well, it doesn't not make sense. I mean, the problem for the Pac-12 is that look, the ACC. These were games that this is a smaller package.
Right.
I'm not calling it tier 3 to disparage it.
Right.
But it's the rear end of the package. Okay, of a major, powerful conference in the ACC. It needed a home. In 2 years, the sublicense expires. It will revert back to ESPN. My understanding is that the conference will get $3 million more a year when that happens, because these games will end up on ACC Network. At least that's what I think it will happen. I could be wrong on some of the technical details on that, but ESPN is probably going to take this content back in a couple of years if the sublicense expires. It's very different than the route that Pac-12's in, where this is the whole shebang, right? And they've got to sort out the package that goes there. So I think it makes sense for the CW. I mean, right now, look, these stations make money by airing programming. A lot of the programming on the CW stations, when they're not airing 2 hours of very highly skewed adult 18 to 49 programming, younger end of it, it's like 18 to 24 programming, they're acquiring content like reruns. Some of the stuff is very highly watched. The Wheel of Fortune, they're running their local news, which they keep 100% of the revenue of. So whenever you talk about taking a station's airtime away, you're going to do two things. First of all, you're impacting that, right, in a time period where they may have acquired content and have contracts already. They have to weigh that. Then when the network takes content away from you, you typically only keep about 10 or 15% of your commercial inventory. And that is because when you had all the content, you controlled it was an entertainment program and syndication, so there's set breaks in there, you know what they are, or it's news where you make up how many breaks you have. You control, one of the reasons why local news is so important to stations is they control the horizontal and the vertical and how long their breaks are. They control how much content they have. So you displace that, and these lower number of ad units have to kind of displace the revenue from owning everything. And it's not always a good, not always a positive economic switch or swap. I know people think it's college football, but the truth of the matter is some of these entertainment programs and syndication, local news, get very high rates. And if you look at where affiliate breaks typically are inside national programs, like take the NFL, for example, they're all around halftime, right? The choice of breaks are controlled by the network. So it's not so easy for the CW affiliates to say, well, this is just great. So there's a lot of things going here. Does it make sense directionally? Yes. And it's the CW. I don't blame Nexstar for wanting to put this stuff on when they own the CW. The question is, what do the stations want to do? They own a bunch of them, but they don't own all of them. And it's not just this, and doing it, like really fast is not good, because, like I said, you got to look at all these business positions or problems, and also the affiliation contracts for the CW don't cover anything outside of primetime, I'm pretty sure. And that means that technically the CW doesn't have the right to program these time periods on the Saturday, Sunday day part. I remember when we got the NFL, that was my first year at Fox. That was a big thing for the network distribution department to do. They all wanted it. The affiliates all wanted the NFL, but what was the negotiation going to look like for us to get those day parts, right? And we played hardball with them and said, look, we're going to move to a different station. And we did in some cases. If you don't come around to this idea, we're not going to negotiate with everybody individually. But this is very different. This isn't the NFL, right? If the Pac-12 puts their third-tier games on there, it's a very different proposition. So I don't know that it makes sense. I don't know that it doesn't make sense. I know that it's a very viable distribution platform. The station groups want to get into this more. The problem is they don't have the money like the big media companies do that own the national networks. If,
in fact, you were, as the Pac-12 does release their deal, and our stance has been at some point they'll figure this out, but it sure has been a long and winding road. But what would you think is enough to scratch the itch for everybody that's left in the Pac-12? And maybe not percentages of linear or Apple or whatever it might be. What do you think, with your history, is enough to scratch the itch?
Well, I think they have to have some kind of network presence with a big established media company of some type. I think they need to have that. Some of that can be on a streaming platform, right? That the media company owns, but they've got to have some. And look, the Pac-12 does have one card to play. Their late window is exclusive high quality sports. It was what drove the value in their last deal, which was a very good TV deal. The deal with Fox and ESPN was a very good deal that Larry Scott did. And a lot of the value was driven by the fact that pay TV operators said, look, you get us high quality football at 10 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday, we'll pay you for that. And both FS1 and the ESPN brands get some kind of percentage of their sub fee from that. So you need to have some kind of distribution that's on TV. I understand the theory that highlights and stuff at 3:30. Look, I mean, we're way beyond that, guys. And that's not going to be offset by allowing a streamer that has really low viewing, right? The truth of the matter is that Amazon accounts for 3% of all minutes consumed across all platforms. Apple TV is 1%. And by contrast, the broadcast cable TV system, which is in secular decline, is still 55%. So you're going to platforms that are very lightly viewed. The NFL went down 40% going to Amazon. So reach is still relevant. Maybe we're going to reach a place somewhere where reach doesn't matter anymore because we get so fractionalized. You've got to have just settle with your little islands. But we're not there yet. So they need some component like that. And then they can sell the bulk to a streamer maybe and get some economics and keep themselves on par with the Big 12 somehow. And depending on the devil's in the details on all these terms, guys, it's not just rights fees. There's what's your distribution look like? What's the term? What are the options in it? They can say they have an on-par deal. This is all about trying to get past the next 3 to 5 years. I've been talking all afternoon with some of my investor clients, and they've been like, what's going to happen here, right? And I'm like, I think some of these content guys really need to get locked up because they don't want to be getting jammed during this massive amount of disruption that's probably going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years because the old system was in decline. It was very profitable, and the content costs followed it, but the new system's not. And it's very unclear if non-traditional players who make a lot of money from places that aren't media want to go waste money there. They're experimenting, and they have a lot of money, but we don't know what they're going to do next. And at the very least, even with that, they're not overpaying for sports, Thursday Night Football notwithstanding. So the revenue costs, the costs have to come in line with revenue, and everybody's starting to come to grips with that.
All that being said about the new way of making money or a new way of distributing is not making anybody money. What do you see as the future for ESPN given everything that's gone on there?
Well, I think it's got a good future, right? I think what Bob was trying to say was they're beginning to reset, and market conditions change. You guys know that. The portfolio that was assembled to take advantage of the last third of peak bundle in the 2000s probably isn't the right mix to have anymore. So that's when he talked about selling some of the other legacy pay TV channels. But ESPN itself is still very profitable, and it has a strong position. Even though the pay TV bundles in secular decline, they're one of the winners in that because they become more and more valuable. They're making $9 a month in a bundled price. They're probably going to 13. And their retransmission fees are going to go up to 8 or 9 for ABC. So, his objective is to try to figure out how to stabilize the streaming distribution, which is losing a lot of money. Some of that will happen by rolling back content costs for entertainment and spending properly on sports content using what I call the TriCast model, where you kind of use the declining established system to finance a lot of your top rights and then figuring out where everything goes across broadcast, pay TV, and streaming and getting the rights to put them anywhere and twisting dials. And an investor would help them with that. The problem is, like I said, we don't know that these non-traditional digital players really want to go spend. I mean, does Apple really want to go absorb Disney for $35 billion or whatever the hell its enterprise value is? I have no idea. I know that everybody on Twitter thinks that's super, super simple because they've been into a Apple store and think that there's lots of cool stuff in there. But I can assure you that people at Apple don't think that's a simple integration. And private equity tends to not want long windows before they can make money. So there's lots of ideas out there. A private equity investor that wants to come and be a part of ESPN that will get some patience. Sovereign funds right? Which we've seen by a lot of sports teams and things like that. But at the end of the day, I told my investor classes today, I just don't think anything's going to happen on that end. They're going to have to figure it out on their own.
So, Patrick, just to be clear, and this is somewhat social media driven, as you know, there's all these lines that are drawn and sides that are picked and all of that, but the death of ESPN, so to speak, is a bit exaggerated right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, ESPN is not dead. I wish there should be a meaning. Everybody declares things dead, and then they just keep going, and then they die again. I mean, ESPN's not dying, but they are. This is something that everybody's going through. If you own media, that includes Apple and Amazon. When they look at the P&L just for the media, it doesn't look good. And the whole secret for them is figuring out is these losses matter because it's marketing spend for something else. It is far from clear that's true. Far from clear, regardless of what people think. Far from clear. They're not outbidding anybody for rights. They're not overpaying for any of that stuff. Thursday Night Football notwithstanding. NASCAR had to pull back from a deal with Amazon because Amazon wouldn't consummate the deal at the price they wanted. And now my understanding is they're taking the Xfinity package back to their network partners. So I, am, very skeptical of the idea that ESPN is going to die because it has all these brands. It has the established pay TV system. While in decline, it's still very profitable. And you can milk that for a while and at the very least stabilize digital, but it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years to sort out. But when they'll get on the other side of it, I mean, look, Snow White and Seven Doors is going to have value in 10 years. And so is the NBA. And they're probably going to keep the NBA. They're still going to have the NFL. They're going to own a large part of the expanded college playoff. They're going to be around. The question is, what are they not going to keep? And some of these layoffs and other things that they've been doing are part of getting their costs under control. Spend more for the things that have the biggest force multiplier, right? But get rid of everything else. So I think that's what it looks like.
Pat, Apple's got billions because, well, they've made really good decisions. They're not going to all of a sudden just throw money at something, are they? The NFL's one thing, but is there anything else that they just might, like you hear about bidding against yourself?
Yeah, I think what happened with Amazon and the NFL was the established system couldn't process it. So Amazon said, look, we're experimenting with this. We need to take a shot. They probably, now in retrospect, maybe paid too much, but they're going to overpay with the NFL. And they're happy with it, right? But that doesn't mean that they're going to go spend anything else, right? What they've learned really quick, I think, with the Pac-12, as you see it, or as you see with MLS, there's no bidding war here. I mean, the original narrative of these guys was they were going to outbid everybody for all these rights. There's no outbidding. And they're not going to do that anymore. They've seen that they don't have to. So you're right. I keep getting, even from sophisticated people, these arguments like, well, they have all this money. And I'm just fascinated by that idea. Smokey, I just don't get why, just because you have a lot of money, you got to throw stuff around. I'll be honest with you. If you look back at the history of media, traditionally, motion picture studios, television networks, before the rise of the pay TV bundle in 1985, those were great places to lose a lot of money. They were in and out of bankruptcy. They were kind of hit-and-miss businesses. When Rupert Murdoch bought Fox in 1985 it was a plaything of an oil billionaire named Marvin Davis. And using the pay TV bundle, he built Fox and what it is today. That was a great business. It's gone. So you're right. I don't know why Apple and Amazon are responsible for bailing out the media business's secular problems. That doesn't mean they won't. I just don't think they're there yet, or it's very unclear.
Pat, thank you. As always, we appreciate the insight and from the fact you used to be a part of a lot of these discussions. By the way, a lot also your background with were you an Army Ranger in the U.S. Army? Is that correct?
No, I was a paratrooper. I was a scout in the 82nd Airborne. Yeah, I spent 11 years total. I was an enlisted man. I left the 82nd a sergeant. I was a scout. Then I went to OCS and got my commission, and I was an infantry officer in the California National Guard for most 4 years. So that was my service career. So I'm not a Ranger, but I am a paratrooper.
Well, I have to ask you this. Was there ever a time growing up where you were scared of heights?
I am scared of heights.
Oh, and you were a parachuter?
Yes, a paratrooper, yes.
Well,
that was the best. That was the best.
Yeah, that was the
I had to go.
That's the quickest way to get out of heights. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
that's right. You can solve your heights problem pretty fast.
Yeah.
Like you get out the door. And I learned that. That was one of the growth experiences of my young life.
Pat, thank you. A lot of people on the chat room saying thanks for your service and very impressed. Thank you very much. All the information, experience when it comes to media, Pat Crakes. We have been fortunate, and I've said this